Welcome everybody back to Boost in Motion, guys, and today we're going to talk about it. This list is going to be the top 10 most overrated cars in the 2010. And I didn't write this, and I'm just going to give you guys my honest opinion because they might have gotten this completely wrong. But before I get into the video, guys, if you're part of the Boost in Motion channel, that means you guys have already hit the like button. Thank you guys for showing your support and watching those ads. And if you're new to the Boost in Motion channel, I am Boost in Motion. I'm a Nissan Infiniti enthusiast, a car enthusiast, and also I report the news. So don't shoot the messenger. So, guys, let's jump in right into it. So, this article comes from this 1 second, guys, don't beat me up. This article comes from Hot Cars, and they wrote it about 2-3 weeks ago, and I'm surprised that I've actually missed this one. So I usually like to find these articles because sometimes the people who write this, we think they're car enthusiasts, but sometimes they're really not. And on my channel, we're car enthusiasts. I don't care. That's the way the Boost in Motion channel rocks. So they have a GTR as a main picture. And that's actually quite funny because I've been talking about GTRs for the last week on my channel, from the R35, the R36, and including the new 2024, 2023 GTR, which is pretty much the same car for the last 16 years. So they might be right when it comes to the GTR. So let's go. Let's talk about it. So Nissan GTR, if we were to travel back to 2008, the year in which the GTR got released, then no, it would not deserve a spot on the list, which I agree with them. I agree. 2008, 2009, this car was a killer. But although the GTR power jumped up all the way to 600 horsepower in 2018, pretty much, guys, it still remains the same car till this date. So if we were betting men, we'd put money on the reason for the GTR overrating status on the JDM Fanatics. The original Skyline GTR, like the R32, revolutionized the sports car realm, but the R35 only evolved it instead of advancing the world around it. Now, in my honest opinion, I personally believe that the GTR R35 definitely was a benchmark for the 20 teens. So I would say no, it wasn't. It's not overrated. I think it was essential in the 20 teens, and it made other manufacturers do better, like Porsche. So I do disagree with them. But after 2018, 2019, where the car ran about 10 years, no more. It's 2023, and we still see this car being made by Nissan. So, no, right now, it is completely overrated, and it should not be made anymore. But for the 20 teens, it was definitely necessary. So, I disagree with that first choice. Let's continue. 9, Subaru BRZ and Toyota GT86. Again, Toyota BRZ, whatever, are both excellent choices for first-time drivers who crave a fun car. But the persona which gearheads make it out to be is nothing more over exaggeration. Okay, both of these cars have a naturally aspirated four-banger, generating only 200 horsepower. And guys, I would actually agree with this. I would say this car was a lot more hyped up, but I think it was only hyped up because the average day person drove it and was like, this is a nice car that gives you a 6-speed manual or automatic. You can have fun with the car, right? But I think they dropped the ball necessarily from Toyota and or Subaru because they could have made this a 4-cylinder turbo vehicle, and they didn't. So I don't think it was overrated. I think it was probably over-exaggerated based on the reviewers because they were getting paid to do it. But necessarily, to be quite honest with y'all, bear with me, guys. To be quite honest with y'all, no, it's garbage. Like, it's a nice car for what it is, but it's like garbage in the sense. Be fair, it's garbage in the sense that they should have just came much more with more power. If the car had more power, at least 300 horsepower, then I would have said essentially that this car would have been a good bang for its buck because it would have more additional power mods, and then thus it can grow and make even more power. But for what it came, it just was a big letdown. So I do agree with this car. Ferrari 488. Now, guys, to be fair, I'm not so much in the exotic game, so I'm gonna say that I'm gonna step back, and I really may not be able to give my opinions on a lot of these exotic cars because I haven't driven or been around people who own these cars. I only go by the reviews and stuff, and some of these guys are just paid. Ferrari never ceases to meet expectations, but the 488 GTB did not disappoint performance-wise, nor was it a sword to the eyes. However, it was stellar predecessor, a Ferrari which we argue is the best modern creation to leave. Okay, the 458 Italia. The 488 broke tradition by being the first mid-engine Ferrari to feature a turbocharged engine, in turn diminishing some of the driver's involvement. Although the 488 GTB remains steadily fast, prancing horse, it still will forever remain the limelight of the 488, no matter how impressive the specs she says it is. I'm not too particular with this. I'm gonna say I'm pretty much a novice, and I would say I'm just gonna have to take their word with it. But for them to say, okay, I would assume this is a situation where maybe they came from a V8 or a specific large displacement motor to something a little smaller, then I would understand and agree where they're actually going with this. And I know people are gonna comment below, so if you think they got this one wrong, let me know in the comments. 7. The Lotus Evora. The Lotus all embodied some of the overall persona: lightweight yet firm chassis, tight rev-happy engine, and go-kart-like handling. The Evora broke nearly every single one of those, yet it remains praised for the most part. When released in 2012, the Evora naturally aspirated 3.5 V6 engine with only 276 horsepower. I mean, I gotta be quite honest with you guys. My G35 made more power than this 3.5 liter, despite sounding more like a sufficient for a Lotus. The Evora weighed only 3,200 pounds. Generally speaking, the Evora is one of the heaviest Lotus sports cars ever made, and its handling unfortunately suffers as a result. So, from what it sounds like here is the car is just pretty much too heavy, and it was very much underpowered and didn't sound exotic, pretty much. So once again, if you guys want to comment below, you can. But looking at these numbers, my 2002 Maximum weighed about the same amount of this car, but it made similar power too. So I don't know. I don't know. This is really up to you guys. Okay, I knew more about the Cayman GT4. So now hold your horses. We know that Porsche Cayman GT4 is one of the best track-focused sports cars there are. But in all honesty, Porsche outclassed themselves eventually. What do we mean by this? So people still refuse to recognize the Cayman GT4 RS existence, or too narrow-minded to realize that the 911 GT3 is a much better buy than the Cayman GT4. The Cayman GT4 was great at the time, but eventually became irrelevant in comparison to the rest of the Porsche lineup. I would say there's a stigma by not being a 911. Let's be quite honest. There is a stigma. Like, it's better for you to get a 911 Carrera. Like, if you got like a Carrera, then it's like, okay, you just made it into the room. Like the Cayman is a dope car from what I've been reading. A lot of people reviewed it and said it's great for what it is. But it's like once again, it's your entryway into Porsche. And people who've been in the Porsche game, they're like, oh, they make that? Oh, those are the Camrys. Those are in the back of the shop. We're not really looking at that. They're starting with Carrera and up. So I think that's why necessarily it doesn't get the love that it should essentially get. And knowing that the price you pay for it, once again, there's other cars on the used market that will probably be even more better, or even older model 911s that you can purchase for about a little bit more. So would you rather buy a used 911 Turbo S, or in this case maybe a GT3, a older model one, over the newer Cayman, or even I believe now they have like the 918. Is it the 918? I forgot that the newest version of the Cayman that's currently out. Would you rather just get an older model Turbo S or get a brand new one of these? And people would probably still get them a Turbo S or a GT3 older model, or GT2 even. Like, they would go with those cars. And I don't mean like the really expensive 200, 300,000 ones. I'm talking about like, we're talking about the 2010s, those older models. Because Porsche people are really different. And I see Porsche people buying a car from in the early 2000s over some of the newer Porsches, especially just the lower model, lower tier ones, just because you can never really compare. You can just never really compare. But anyways, let's continue. Five, i8. Oh God, I think this one is completely overrated. This one has been fully. The BMW i8 should have been way better than what it really was. So yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, the doors go up like a supercar, but no, it's far from earning a supercar title. The i8 hybrid powertrain consists of a 1.5-liter three-cylinder engine that makes 357 horsepower, right? And in the real world, that is enough to send the BMW i8 to 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. That's longer than it takes the ultimate $35,000 sleeper car bargain, the F10. Okay, so they're not really giving no information here. In my personal opinion, from knowing the i8 was pretty much the staple car of where BMW wanted to head and show their hybrid technology and say that, yo, we thought it and we built it and we did it. That's what they did with the i8. And dynamically, the i8 is a nice car. It is really a nice car. You're basically in like a supercar tub. It's like you're built around carbon fiber or reinforced other material. The car is dope. I honestly think that the car is actually dope for what it is. It's just that people thought the people who ran to go get this car was like, this is the newest technology. This is where the future of BMW is going. But the car is technically a letdown. It's not all of what you really think it is. I think it's a car that, once again, it gets pretty good, decent gas mileage. The doors go up, and nothing out there really looks like it. I just leave it as it's the staple of BMW showing that we thought about it and we built it and we made it. We showed that we can make the technology, and now you know we can do it. And you guys paid for it, idiots. But anyways, let's continue. Hyundai Genesis Coupe, just like the GT86, the affordable price tag makes you turn your blind eye to the truth. Even though the Hyundai Genesis drives surprisingly well, it's still much slower than many believe it is. Now, in the most powerful trim, the Genesis 3.8 generate 300 horsepower, and while this may sound impressive on paper, the Hyundai Genesis Coupe still takes 6.5 seconds to get 0 to 60. Um, no, I'm gonna disagree with this one because this one is more emotional to me. No, I don't want to say emotional because you guys are gonna think I'm coming from an emotional place. The Hyundai Genesis was a pretty nice car. I remember it was competing with like the G37s and other V6s of the time of when it came out, and it had pretty good warranty. The only thing is, no one really wanted to buy a Hyundai at that time. No one. And the price tag of this car wasn't that much more cheaper than like a G37 at the time. Like, it was in a market where it's like it was nice, but at the end of the day, would you rather get the V6 model or the 4-cylinder turbo? Now, the 4-cylinder turbo wasn't as reliable, and barely even see that car out that much. But people actually were picking up the 4-cylinder turbo because it was a way better bang for its buck, and you can modify and tune those to make more horsepower than the V6 variant. So I don't think this car was hyped up. I think this was just the fact that Hyundai as a brand wasn't established enough to make a sports car that people would want to jump behind and choose to purchase. They gave you an automatic and a 6-speed manual option, and it was rear-wheel drive. They did a good job. They did what they're supposed to do. But the Hyundai brand just wasn't positioned for us to care. And honest, the whole Genesis thing is still confusing because even now, Genesis is now more on the luxury side of Hyundai. So now they make 4-door sedans. The Hyundai Genesis Coupe was just them trying to figure themselves out. So I don't think it was overhyped. I think they got this one completely wrong. The M4. Let's see what they talking about. Now, this one is arguably the most controversial entry to this list. The first generation M4, while this remains one of the world's favorite drift platforms to work on since the M4's rear-wheel drive, okay, and horsepower figures, okay. So what are they talking about? Even though the M4 is one of the most reliable BMWs ever produced, except for the crank hub issues, but it's still a very reliable car. It is still massively overhyped due to the younger, uneducated fans. There is no denying that the M4 is an amazing vehicle, but there are countless alternatives that equal as or even better than the M4, such as a V8 power AMG C63 or more versatile RS5. I can't agree. I know some of you guys hate BMW, but they're saying this car is overhyped. When this car came out, it was revolutionary. Yes, we came from the V8 to the inline 6 turbo. Okay, cool. They didn't like the sound of the car. But you can't deny it. This car was dope, and a lot of people loved it, and it competed quite well in the supercar platform. Same thing like the GTR did. It did its thing, and a lot of people loved it. Now, at the end of the day, people love the C60 because you still get the V8, but no, I just can't agree. I just I think they're caring more about the crowd of people who drive these cars and speak about it. BMW M game is always going to be deep. And not everybody's a car person, but I don't think this car was overhyped at all. I just know as an automotive enthusiast during when the in session how much these cars were out, people were just thinking these cars are godly. They weren't godly. But for what it came and for what it was worth, I think they were quite at that point was a really for when it came out, it was really good rear-wheel drive car that has a really good automatic transmission and you get it in 6 speed. And to modify this car was relatively cheap and easy, and it made good power. With the exception of the crank hub issue, it is essentially a really reliable car. And moving forward, even now in 2023, I think these cars are a bargain where you can get one in about for around the $40,000 range, and you just spend a couple $1,000s on a crank hub, and essentially you can build this car up to 500, 600, 700, 800 wheel horsepower, pretty much on stock, almost everything. And it's really easy to modify and work on. So, no, I completely disagree with them. This car was not overhyped. Last two cars on the list. We have a Acura NSX. This is the only one reason to call a revived Acura NSX an overhyped supercar, and that's because its shoes have because the shoe it had to wear was impossible to fill. The original NSX was such a massive success and remains an iconic piece of Japanese motoring history. Nothing will ever be able to come close to that again, right? So instead of adopting the same naturally aspirated V6, which I don't think they should have. Why would you even write that in the comments? Write that. You want them to adopt a naturally aspirated V6. You know this is freaking like Honda, right? You know that car only makes like 300 something horses, and you want them to put that in a today age, technically kind of supercar. The original X-Plate had the modern redensation. I can't even see where it is. Therefore, contained a turbocharged V6 and 3 electric motors to put out 573 horsepower and 476 pounds of torque. Regardless of the hybrid supercar's 3.1 seconds 0 to 60 time, it did not retain the same recipe of the old NSX used. Before we get to the last one spot, guys, please hit the like button if you made it to this part. But also, I have to stop right here and speak on the NSX because I am a JDM guy too. Whoever wrote this article, I think they're being disingenuous because they just made a short article and they're just trying to rush us through the read, right? This is what they did wrong with the NSX. Number one, first thing they did wrong with the NSX is the price point. The NSX currently is way too expensive for the average day person. That's what's wrong with the NSX. Yes, it is a good-looking car. It is. Think about the Lexus LFA or whatever. It was like $500,000, whatever price it was. It was super high expensive for the time being, right? And it was Lexus. Only a few people purchased it. But with the NSX, they made it too expensive because the second thing they did wrong is they made it technically like a hybrid vehicle with 3 electric motors. They tried to instill new technology into it, and they thought that the market would jump into it. The market at the time was still buying GTRs. Like when this car came out, they were still buying GTRs for like $120,000. So they priced it at a price point that was similar to a GTR. And guess what? No one bought it because it couldn't beat GTRs. Stock for stock, NSX can't even beat a stock GTR. What are we talking about here? It's a Honda. Sorry, Acura, you're a Honda. And if you're going to make a technically supercar something fast, you'll make it fast. So this is where they messed. That's the second thing they messed up by adding these electric motors. Skip the electric motors, just kept it as turbocharged V6 all-wheel drive. Lower the price margin, 20 to 30,000. The price point of the car should have been about 85, $85 to maybe $105,000, right around that range, people would have bought it because there's a lot of other cars, coupes, all-wheel drives or road drive coupes with that are turbocharged that are in that price margin, and people would have purchased it because it would have had less of all this nonsense going on and more better for people's pockets, and people would have been able to technically afford it. Period. That is all. So this is a Honda fault. Honda priced their car too high. They thought it would be compared to a GTR, and it didn't. Period. There's a reason why people spent $200,000 on a GTR Nismo, because it's a GTR Nismo. No one's gonna buy an NSX at $130,000 with 3 electric motors. Finally, this one. Whew. This one hits heavy, guys. This one hits heavy. If you made it to this part, man, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. But I didn't even know the last one on the list was going to be a Nissan 370Z or Z. Once again, the Nissan 370Z itself was not a bad car by any means, but it never did anything revolutionary. We were expecting the 370Z to be a successor to the 350Z, but instead we revived that what seems to be a minor facelift for the 350Z. Shoot, I wonder how they feel about the Nissan Z now that's out, the actual Z, because all it is a 370Z with the twin turbo motor. So even the 370Z Nismo was too similar to the base 370Z. Oh, and don't even get us started with the outdated interior. In all honesty, just to save your money, get a 350Z or spend extra money and upgrade to the new Nissan Z. All right, finally, this is my last opinion. As a Nissan Infiniti enthusiast, I'm going to be honest with you, as a Nissan Infiniti enthusiast, knowing where this car was in the platform and when it was made and everything like that, sitting there really thinking what the context is. Was this car overhyped for the 2018s? I would say yes. Compared to what was on the market from when the 370Z came out to even when they were making it all the way, I think, until the 2020 or 2019, they were making this car and no one was buying anymore. There was so much other cars on the market that was so much more better, and the VQ NA V6 is pretty much out of date. You had the 2016 and up Q50s that use a twin turbo VR30. So we were waiting to see them put them in the Nissan Z, and they didn't. They just kept on making the Nissan 370Z. I think on the used market in 2023, even then, buying a 370Z for $25,000 to $30,000 is insane. No disrespect to anybody, but it's a quite expensive car to buy with such outdated technology. Yes, I understand the pros. It still could get it automatic. You can still get a 6-speed manual, and it's still technically a car that can technically do it all. You drift these cars. You add power atoms. You go to the track. You can do a lot. Nissan makes cars that are very, very versatile in a lot of things that they can do in motorsports. But for the 2010s, was this a car that I think was just like, yo, you got 370Z? I think it was a staple for the car community, but honestly, I think it might have been a little overhyped because it wasn't, like they said, it wasn't revolutionary. It didn't make a big change or any. They just didn't make it different. They didn't make it different enough. And yes, you could get a clapped out 350Z and have fun and slide on that, and pretty much beat on that car. You can do that. The 370Z is just the nicer brother. Honestly, that's it. It's just a nicer brother, but it still has some of the same driving feel of the 350Z. But just the 350Z, you could just throw in the corners a lot more and just beat on it. So I would say, all in all, I do agree with them. So outside that, guys, let me know how you feel about this list. Hopefully, you guys comment below about the different ones that you believe are very truthful and which are maybe they're just being disingenuous about. I gave you guys my honest opinion on it. And if there's anything that you think you might have missed, or maybe somebody, a car you might replace, also type that in the comment and say, hey, listen, they should have put this car and removed this one. But outside that, guys, you have a good morning, good afternoon, good night. You can add me at boostinmotion on G and Facebook. Also, you can send me email at boostinmotion@gmail.com. Otherwise than that, guys, I appreciate it. You guys have a good day. Thank you.